I think everybody here knows of Grab Taxi, and it was launched like in 2012. We've seen how the app has grown. We know that there's more than like 3.6 million downloads as it is, and accumulating even as we speak. But how did it all begin for you as the founder of this business?
Okay, so it started with actually for those who've who here has Grab Taxi not installed. Okay. Alright, Jinming, send them the promo code, please.
Special promo only for this evening.
It's called I Love Jesus, and you get $10 off. No. I think the first is, it actually started way before the official story. If you go on any of the major publications, whether it's Straits Times in Singapore, or CNBC, or anything like that, a lot of it covers the official story. So I'm going to give you the real deal. It actually started a number of years ago, even before I went to business school. I actually went with my mother to church, and I sat in for the sermon, and the sermon was very powerful about being a shepherd and being a steward of business. But more importantly wasn't the sermon, was I went up to the pastor after, at the end of it. My mom, obviously, like mothers, dragged me to the front. The pastor must save you, must save you. So I went there, and he spoke to me, and then he said, Anthony, can I pray for you? So the skeptical me, I said, sure, what do I have to lose, right? So I bowed my head, and then he prayed for me. And he said, and then after, at the end of it, he said, Anthony, he prophesied, he said, Anthony, you're going to transform public transportation. And I'm like, what is this guy smoking? I'm like, what's going on? So I was completely confused. And then I thought it was because of the stuff I'm helping my family with. And then I went to business school, didn't think anything about it. And then in business school, I started going to Christian fellowship. I started getting a bit more involved with God and with the church. Then one of my very close friends invited me for another session with another pastor, and this time he's a pastor from LA, Pastor Jason Ma, and he came up to me and he again prayed for me. And he then, after he prayed for me, he said, Anthony, so there were three of us, and he said, one of you, he said, you're going to influence United States, Silicon Valley specifically. They looked at now the three of us are fellowship brothers, and we have a fellowship until today, every week. And the second guy, he goes, oh, you're going to transform Hong Kong and China. And then he came to me and he said, you're going to transform Southeast Asia, and you're going to transform it through technology. And again, I was like, what are these people talking about? It was just crazy. And then of course it reminded me of that old incident, but I was like, this was way before anything happened. Then now comes the official story. The official story is a very close Indonesian friend visited me my first winter break. And he came in and he said, Anthony, holy cow, taxis in Malaysia are terrible. And he said, Anthony, you gotta fix this. Stop thinking about yourself and your family and building the empire. Really think about how to fix this. And I'm like, dude, you come to my house, eat my food, stay in my house, alongside my place, and yet you give me all this trouble to solve this problem. Are you really kidding me? And he just said, Anthony, you just gotta fix it. You gotta think of a way. So I went back to school, the problem on my mind, and we tinkered around, we played around with some ideas. And the first project, which was just idea of renting cars, providing safe, affordable transport, especially for women, by renting cars. actually was out there, and then I got like a B or C in Harvard, and they were like, yeah, you're useless. So I was like, oh my god, I'm so stupid. So that didn't work out. And then I met my co-founder, and then I had another girl. So both of them were from McKinsey, much smarter than me. And then they were like, oh Anthony, let's think about it this way. And then this was in 2009 and 2010, and we started tinkering ideas, and we could see, some people were like, oh, maybe it'll work, but taxis really, and it's such a problem. And then we're like, you know what, it's not going to be a real business. It's going to be a business for social entrepreneurship. So there's 2 tracks actually at Harvard. There's one track called social entrepreneurship track, and there's a business track. And we said, okay, let's go and submit it for social entrepreneurship, because I really think it can help women feel safer across, at that time we only taught Malaysia. And then we said, and it will also help drivers, because my great-grandfather was a taxi driver. So we remember how tough it was. At least my father tells me how tough it was. And I said, well, these are 2 very legitimate reasons. So I made a case to the social entrepreneurship track. And they're like, no, Anthony, drivers don't need your help. Drivers, I'm like, you don't know how poor drivers are in Southeast Asia, in Malaysia. And he's like, no, it just won't work. So it's a stupid idea, it's not gonna work. So like, oh my gosh. So every time, wherever we went, it was just stupid idea, it just won't work, bad grades. Then we just said, you know what, we're just gonna push through. I have 2 very smart friends, and the 3 of us, we went ahead, we worked out the deck, and we submitted it for business enterprise track. And who knows, we were the first Asian team from Asia to actually get to gain so much traction. We did very well. And then we actually got funded from the business school. So that's how the first dollars entered into the business. And we then took that and we started it in Malaysia.
In those days when you first started, obviously there were naysayers all around, right from your professors to your own father. What was really motivating you to press on in spite of these negativity around you?
I think one is selfish. One was I grew up as Victor just shared. I grew up in an environment where it was quite painful, because every time I did whatever I did, it was because he comes from this family, or it was always, everything was because of my grandfather. Everything, whether it was good results or whether it was good in sports or anything else. Oh, of course, he goes to these schools because he comes from this family. So I think selfishly, I wanted to prove to my father that I don't need that. So we've never had to leverage off that. We never had to leverage off the name. We never had to, and I use never exaggeratedly, because I think no matter what, because people know my background, naturally, it does help already. So for that, I'm always grateful. And it's true, without, I did get a merit scholarship to Harvard, but he did pay for my undergraduate, so if it's not for his money, I couldn't even be there. But just knowing that at least at 24, I didn't take 1 cent from him after that, not from the family group, not from him, made me feel that I could do something that I could be proud of. And that was the first thing. Then that was the initial, I would say, like hunger. The second, what I didn't realize, which was a very happy byproduct, was actually when I started talking to taxi drivers, especially in Malaysia, in Philippines, and drivers, when they started talking to us, you would see when first they don't know who I am, so I'm always asking them mystery shopping. Always, because we couldn't afford survey companies then, so I would go out and be a mystery shopper. And after that, when they do find out, they refuse to take let me pay for the meter, their eyes will get wet, and they just give you this feeling that you have changed their lives. Then I thought, oh, maybe it was one off. Then I went from Manila, then we went to Vietnam, and then we had a, just one story. I had 3 Grab bike. We launched, so we have a Grab taxi, a Grab bike, a Grab car. So Grab bike, we had 3 drivers, and they were in Vietnamese. I was speaking to them, and they said, and each of them said, before you came, I would make about $20 to $30 a day on a very good day. Ever since Grab bike started, I 4x my take-home pay. I 4 times my take-home pay. It's changed my life. I don't have to work 18 hours anymore. I work 12. I have more time for my family, and my kids can afford to go to a good school now. And knowing that, and seeing his eyes tear up, my fiance was there as well. She was also tearing up. It was just these moments, I think, really, to your point just now about your slides. We actually, when we started, we had to finance a phone. So we would say, hey, here's a phone. Here is your new rice bowl. And you're like, this is not a bowl, this is a phone. And we said, well, it's going to help. It's a fishing rod for you to generate as much platform transactions, or in simple terms, as much business as possible for you, increasing your throughput, minimizing your fuel costs, and helping you make a lot more money. So these opportunities created, and for now we have 85,000 drivers across 22 cities. That's what motivates me, knowing that we help 84,000 drivers. We transport several 100,000 people a day. A big chunk of them women, safely across the region. Right? Knowing that if we were to fail, several 100,000 people don't get to work, don't go to see their grandmother in the hospital, don't go to school. Right? That's what really drives us these days.
So you found that the app was really solving a problem, not just for the taxi drivers, but also for the customers of the taxis. Would that be an advice that you would give to entrepreneurs to identify a problem and to find a solution to it?
Of course, that's the very soul of business. Are you identifying a real problem? First of all, the usual, is there a real problem? How big is the problem? What's the addressable market size? How painful is the problem, right? How much are people willing to pay to solve that problem? Those are the usual sort of business school questions. I think you have to ask yourself, one of the things that I'm very grateful for is I spent a lot of time talking to my fellowship brothers about it. I spent a lot of time thinking, besides going through multiple iterations before kicking it off with professors and my classmates, I spent a lot of time praying as well. And the prayer a lot of times gave me a lot of clarity, and it identified opportunities that I think a person who didn't hear or didn't clear the individual's mind enough to hear what God has to say may let the world's noise come in, and when the world's noise come in, it's very hard to get clarity. And when you can't get clarity, you can't prioritize, you can't out-execute the competition. So I would say the soul of it still comes back to why we're all here in the first place.
So do you feel that doing this, was this really a calling from God? I mean, we had the prophetic call that we heard from you, twice. But now that you've been in this, has it been really confirmed for you that this is really your calling?
Let me put it this way. If tomorrow it all becomes zero. If tomorrow I owe a bank X millions, I would still be so grateful that God gave me the chance.
You know, when God calls us to do something, usually He would deposit something into our lives to enable us to do it. It is empowering you to do that which He has called you. What do you think God has put into your life which made you uniquely positioned to undertake this particular business?
Sorry, I'm getting a little emotional. I think the first thing is it's blessed me with great talent. That's like Jin Ming there, who joined me. It's allowed me to scale because I mean, tech. What is tech? We don't even own a car, but we transport hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people. It's all people. It's all talent. That's the first. The second is what you need to start a business: money. Great investors like Luke, who's there. He believed in us when nobody else did. I have another very, in fact, our very first investor was homegrown from Singapore, Vertex from Temasek, and actually one of them is also a very strong believer, Lorraine, and these, you know, it really makes a difference to have talent, to have investors, to have an amazingly supportive fiance who are centered on Christ, because your values are aligned, and once your values are aligned, the speed at which you can execute because you trust each other. So you know, my friends, I'm calling them out just because they're here and they shouldn't have showed up. But you know, friends like Luke or Jin Ming, they trust me with whether it's their money or their career. They join Grab not just because of the mission, but they also join because of the leader. And if they can trust you and you can reciprocate that trust, the alignment is so straight and so fast that you can out-execute competition. Besides all the people around, I think just timing. I like to believe that, you know, I was the one, or I did this, or I did that, but it's all, I'll be lying to your face if I said that. A lot of people had this idea. A lot of people could do this. A lot. You throw a rock and somebody here had a taxi app idea. It's not rocket science. But timing of knowing and executing when by God's clock and not by your own and not by the world's clock, I think those are a lot more powerful. So for example, I'll give you an example. You know, I saw up there this 250 million thing. So it seems like a lot, and it is a lot. And we are extremely blessed. But you know, when we went fundraising, we thought to ourselves, are you sure you want to deal with this company? And when I went there, it closed, the day I met them to the day it closed was 37 days. 37 days for 250 million. Maybe to some of you it's not much, but to me it's literally a miracle to execute that fast. But there were many people who approached him before, they didn't get it. And now, when now they have diverted their attention to other things, to other spaces, maybe whether it's another technology space, or maybe renewable energy or another space, but timing of being at that seat. So Masayoshi-san sat me in this way, and he said, Anthony, 14 years ago, Jack Ma sat in that same seat. And I'm like, holy cow, how the heck did I get here? And it's timing, right? It's not that if I was just maybe 2 days later, that seat will be gone. So a lot of times it's also God's timing.
So, how else does God feature in your business? Both operationally, strategically?
Let me be the first to admit that I don't submit enough. I think probably our biggest mistakes has also been hiring mistakes, for example. And sometimes hiring people who are not aligned to your values or God's values, and it doesn't have to be Christian or non-Christian, but it's just proper values, right? I made those mistakes, and I look back at those mistakes, and I ask myself, what could I have done differently? I think one of the things I'm trying to do now, for example, before coming here, I prayed by the sea. Right? Before any big interviews, I usually submit to Him. Before going in front of my teammates in a big, so tomorrow I have a money management meeting across all our leadership, I would submit to Him. So just constantly, every time before what could be those decision points, those points where you have to make an impression or a sale or a recruitment or something rather significant, I would say just submit it to Him. That has really helped me, because whether it works out well or not is a separate issue. But I know that I'm working according to His rhythm, and whether it favored us or not, it's irregardless. All I know is I know I did the right thing according to His word.
So it's not outcome driven, but it's really about the process, and that process is submission.
That's right.
Okay, that's an important point. Now, how many employees do you have in the whole of GrabTaxi now?
When I started, of course, there was just myself and my co-founder. That was 35 months ago. Today we have 600 plus, and we're growing extremely fast. 2 days ago, again, quick story, about 3 months ago, we had the same pastor, Pastor Jason Ma, who's officiating our marriage. He said, Anthony, you're going to do something in China. And I was like, China? I'm like, dude, I'm here in Southeast Asia. I like Southeast Asia. We're happy in Southeast Asia. We're going to do something in China. And I looked at my fiancée. She looked at me like, again, it was like, are you smoking crack? Which obviously he's a pastor. So I just 2 days ago, we launched a new engineering center in Beijing with some really great engineers. So again, or 7 countries, so 600 plus employees, 7 countries. It's literally a miracle. I just want to say, your tagline of partnership.
In our Father's business.
In our Father's business, I would say it's not even like a marriage is like a merger of 2 entities, right? This is the business is literally a merger. It's a joint venture with God. So if God is your partner, think about how you wanna. If every day you go to work and say, this is my business, but this is also God's business, I think you would make very different decisions.
So if God is your partner, what kind of a partner is He? There are different kinds of partners. You have senior partners, you have junior partners,
Sleeping partner.
and you have sleeping partners. So what kind of a partner is he in reality, in actuality, in day-to-day issues?
Day-to-day, that's a really good question. As you can tell, I actually had a deck. Jin Ming prepared the deck, and all his hard work. Sorry, we didn't put it up because I think
Put it out.
no, because Victor and the team was very kind to spend time with me last night, and we decided to not plan anything and just let God take over the conversation. So that's a really hard question. I think how he's taken over day to day. He's for sure not a sleeping partner. I think let's go through process of elimination, right? Is he a sleeping partner? No. Is he a minority partner? No. Is he a significant partner? No. Is he a joint venture partner? Is he 50-50? Or is he more than that? Or is he a majority shareholder? I think God as my father, one thing, the word, when I think about ownership, I think about wealth. I think about wealth creation. I think that, and again, this is just my thoughts. In the Bible, it teaches us that wealth is not for us. We're just merely a custodian for our children's children. And if you take that position, then the company that God and you build is not even yours. So I would say, in my case, I may be the chosen custodian by Him, but that's all I am today. Who He wants to inherit, whether it's the wealth creation or hopefully on the liabilities, and the executive power of the decision is in His hands.
So would you say that the ownership really is His? That in fact, He is, although you carry that title, but in actuality He is the CEO, and you just happen to be His appointed manager of the business. Would you go so far as to say that?
Well, first, the CEO is my fiancée and future wife. so I guess the true answer is the CEO is God in this sense. Yes, I would say that. And if God decides that I am no longer fit to run the company, then I hope He finds someone who is just as passionate, just even better. And that's all I can hope for.
With 600 plus employees around the region, you obviously are not responsible for every single hire, but clearly I think you have inputs in the key hires. What type of leader do you look for in hiring, key leadership positions?
So we make it quite clear when we hire. There are only two currencies out there. One, merit. Two, values. If a person came green, 3 years, 15 fingers, but held those two things, we would hire the person. And the person would do very well in the company. So I'll give you an example. 50% of our leadership are women, which is unheard of even in the States in tech companies. So out of my 12 direct reports, 6 are women. Half of my direct reports are Christians. It's not by design, I can assure you that. In fact, I have made it very clear, we are completely agnostic to both religion, race, gender, age. My direct reports start from 30, 31, all the way to 48. So absolutely no regard to age. So what we look out for, I think the first is will he or she help us solve the problem that we're looking for? I think that's very, very important, because that goes to the first point, merit. So first, is there a problem? So even before you think of hiring, so it's very easy, I think, and I will recommend this book. It's A in Hiring, and I'll give you the author's name, it's in my Kindle. And it basically suggests that when you are focused on a problem, so say the problem is, I don't know, raising money, for example, since there are a lot of entrepreneurs here, I would rather focus in not looking at, hey, what does a CFO need, or what does a head of finance need, or I would rather not focus on the JD and the tasks, or the responsibility, or the skill sets. I'll focus on the actual need. If the need is to raise money, then you work backwards and you look, okay, that means he or she needs to have a good pool of investors, he or she needs to be very sincere, authentic, because investors want to work with people who they can trust, right? You then work backwards. I think that has really helped, being problem focused rather than being so issue focused rather than skill set focused.
With such a great number of people in the organization now, and because it's growing and multiplying so quickly, what would you describe as your management style in leading this ever-growing team in the business?
I think the first thing is we're extremely mission-oriented. So the purpose is to help really make a positive difference in the world. So whether it's the lives of drivers, whether it's helping women feel safer across the region, helping people move faster, cheaper, probably are things that we think about. So we first align on the mission, right? So there's a very strong orientation on the mission. Even when we onboard people at the beginning. So the first video you'll see once you're on board, the first day you arrive, is about the mission, and we go on and on about the mission. I think our leadership style has always been about what can we do to align things faster, and so we have a lot of alignment meetings. So I have a cadence of weekly one-on-ones with my direct reports. I have a bi-weekly cadence of management meetings. I have a bi-weekly cadence of certain steering goals where these decisions. So again, it's very different from just 3 months ago. The company we are operating in and we're managing today is a very different company from the company I started in the early days. Let me correct myself. The company is very different from just 3 months ago. And me as a CEO, I need to justify my pay grade. While my investors out there are going to say, Anthony, we need to find another CEO because you were a cool CEO then, but you're not so cool now. We need to justify our pay grade. So I have to be the CEO of that kind of company. And again, it's very different. In the early days, everything was just shared. We sat around, I don't know if you know, in Malaysia, if you go to the street side, they sell nasi lemak, and it's by these plastic tables. That's what we used to sit around, that plastic table, and like 5 of us, the head of marketing, the head of finance, we just sat around, 5 of us. Today, we have 12 offices, so how I communicate has completely changed. So now I don't see many people. A lot of times I go to the office, they look at me, I look at them, they don't know who I am, I don't know who they are, right? Because we are hiring so fast. I mean, just last month I think we made 40 engineering offers just in 1 month. So the point is, I'm very different from what I am just 3 months ago. Today, which I don't subscribe for anyone else, because you need to determine what is the right leader that is needed at that time.
Every business exists for a reason. And clearly, with the prophecy that was given to you even before you started this, God had intentionally called you, into this business. What is that purpose which you think Grab Taxi is serving as far as the kingdom is concerned?
For me, it's one thing. It's quite simple. Again, I'm saying this very carefully, but I'm sure he will agree with me. Even if I were to lose all his money, and yes, Liu, I'm calling you out. So, even if I were to lose all his money and all the investors' money, I know that we have done more for 85,000 drivers today than all the Southeast Asian governments combined in the past 10, 15 years. I know that for a fact. We've done a study with World Bank, and our drivers make between 30 to 300% more take-home pay every day. Through productivity gains, through whether it's through the incentives, whatever it may be, through quality of service, because we reward on multiple schemes. I know that. The second thing is, I know that a lot of women across the region can use public transport and can depend on a public transport every day. So knowing these two things, knowing that we have left the imprint on the world, and I think if we succeeded, if we showed to the world that you can do good and you can create huge economic value, if this company becomes 10x of what, it's probably become 10x from where Liu came in, but when it becomes 100x from where Liu invested in, and we are successful, I think it will show to the world that, one, do not be afraid of the bigger gorilla out there. Two, that the entire startup ecosystem is ready for domestic giants. The Tencent, the Alibabas of China are just, they are no longer an anomaly. Southeast Asia can create its own champions. And when you have a, forgive me for not being modest, but when you have a sort of a model of an internet giant that has created huge social value, I would say we created more social value than economic value, if you look at our books. And the social and economic value combined, and yet we came out as winners. Every internet startup out there in Southeast Asia will then say, I have a chance. Imagine the ripple effect from that. When you talk about your stories, imagine from 3,000 kids you can help 3 million kids. And every startup thinks that way. That's when you know you've left a footprint in this part of the world.
Every business, particularly businesses that are run by Christians, the business owner always thinks about how the business is making an impact for the kingdom. And depending on the industry that you're in, depending on the environment that you operate in, there are either covert ways of doing that or overt ways of doing that. What has the policy of Grab Taxi been as far as this is concerned? Do you intentionally go out and bring a message across, or do you allow your service to speak that difference into the lives of people?
I can only wish that our service resonated God's work every day, but unfortunately it doesn't. We still ban 15 drivers a day.
I think our benchmark is, of course, that every service we offer to customers and our service to drivers, because drivers actually pay us a lot of money, we can all get that impression that it's, when, I don't know if you've been to hotels where they give you a little cookie. There's a nice warm chocolate chip cookie. Imagine if people could get God's cookie every time they're served by us. And that would be the true testimony. We have not reached there, for sure. We have much to do, much to improve. But one thing's a guarantee is that we are building a machinery that can iterate very quickly to move towards that path. Personally, I am quite vocal. Recently, a competitor, which I will not mention the name, one of their senior people talked to my fellowship brother in the States. This was in the Valley. My fellowship brother heads Dropbox for all international markets outside of America. And he was talking to him, and he said, "Hey, you know this guy Anthony?" And he says, "Oh, yeah, he's my fellowship brother." And he said, "Wow, he's super Christian." And the fact that I've never met this guy, but the fact that one of the leaders in a competitor in Silicon Valley, I'm here in Singapore or Malaysia or Indonesia, can know that, I know he's heard at least some message. Whether the message is right or wrong is one thing, but I know he's heard it. And he shot me an email, my fellowship brother OJ, he shot me an email, said, "Anthony, I was proud of you before, but I've never been more proud of you. Because the company hates you, and everybody knows that the company hates you. Yet a leader within the company can talk about you in that way, in a positive light, as a Christian. You know you've made ripple effects."
What about down to the drivers, for example? Do they know that they're driving for a company that has a Christian boss?
I don't know, I can't say, I think 84,000 drivers, but I can say in Manila, we've had a town hall of drivers, and we prayed together. So because it's a Catholic country, it's actually fine and practice to open up. So I would always, before a big town hall of drivers, I would actually open up with a prayer. So for sure in the Philippines, I'm sure they know. In Singapore, very recently, it was quite amusing. I was in a taxi. I booked a Grab, and I was in a taxi, and then the driver had a Christian song on, and I was going to see. I was going to see a potential. It was a business partner or something. Or something that was surely something I was trying to win. I don't know whether it was an investor or a partner of some kind. And I was in the car, and he was playing Christian music. I said, "Wow." I said, "Uncle, do you mind if we pray together while you drive?" And he says, he obviously didn't know who I was. Then, but he saw I had a Grab t-shirt, and I like it fast. And he looked at me, "You work at Grab?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Okay." He says, "Okay, we'll pray together." But he said, "I have to keep my eyes on the road so I can close my eyes." I said, "Yeah, of course, of course." I said, "I didn't expect you to close your eyes." But we prayed together. Did he ever find out that I'm the CEO? I'm not sure. But I know that we had a great prayer on the way to the meeting. I don't remember if I got the deal or not, but I do remember praying together with the driver.
So, obviously much of your life now revolves around building the business. Right? Are you able to see yourself beyond Grab? In other words, is there an Anthony Tan outside of Grab Taxi?
Well, let me put it this way. When I proposed to my fiancée, it had Grab behind us. So
you literally grabbed her.
Literally, I grabbed her. When we're getting married and there's something like 70 people coming for it's a very, very small wedding because I'm paying for it. So I'm like my father, Kim Siam. Because there's so few people, but 22 or 23 of them are Grab people. So my fiancé goes, there are more Grab people coming than my family and your family combined. I think Grab right now is a bit Anthony Tan, and Anthony Tan is a bit Grab. It's not a bit. It's probably intertwined. Our lives, literally, the second I open my eyes, it's about a problem or something on my phone. I literally pick up my phone and answer it. I start dealing with problems. I fall asleep a lot of times thinking about the work. But it's just at one point in my life. Soon, we will have kids, and God willing, and they will see me not as a Grab papa, right? They will see me as dad, and that's going to be a very different phase of my life. At some point, and I always thought about going back to do a PhD or serving in business ministry. I think those phases is when Grab will still be part of me, but it'll be part of my story rather than part of me.
Last advice to your fellow Christian marketplace people. From everything that God has taught you, for the last few years, everything that is distilled into this great big challenge that you have, what is the one thing that you can leave with them tonight?
So he's constantly challenging me throughout the night. This is a hard place. I'm gonna give my fellow brother and teammate a bit of credit. He prepared a lot of work, and one of the key slides that was presented actually was about the story of the three servants. The master was given something, capital, if you may, to do what they may. And as you all know, the story goes where two multiplied and one just kept it and preserved capital. I would like to remind us to seek that story of stewardship, not because of plain stewardship, but if God blessed you with capital, with opportunity, with talent, with great teammates, and you're here today because of your business, and you don't multiply and you don't work on it, you are failing God. You are failing God's capital to you. Because as a master who's given us all this, take it, appreciate, thank Him, and give it everything you've got. Because life is short. And if you don't, it's not a good thing. But if you do, and whether it multiplies or not, but you gave it everything, I know, I believe to the very core that you do upon His word, regardless of the outcome, it will be multiplied in His kingdom.
Well, let's give Anthony and Chloe a hand.